So we are here today to talk about eating disorders, and I have Eleanor here she is a licensed professional counselor that specializes in eating disorders. So she has a lot of good knowledge to tell us and share with us on this very, to me, important subject that I wanted to cover. So can you tell us a little bit more about eating disorders and maybe how it starts in people? Does it start as a child? Is it part of you genetically? Can you give us some?
Yeah, so I call eating disorders the perfect storm. Unfortunately, the right things come together in a person. So it's genetic, it's biological, it's social, it's psychological. So we like to say that genetics loads the gun and environment pulls the trigger.
Right.
And so there is a genetic susceptibility.
Okay.
So if you have a family member that's had an eating disorder or disordered eating, you're more likely
prone to it. Okay.
Yeah, prone to it. Environmentally, it depends on the type of family you're growing up in. If it's a family that's highly focused on weight and shape, obviously there's more of a chance that
you'd
that
be
could
more
occur.
aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But also in families that may not focus on weight and shape, it actually could be a family that's very chaotic or a family that's very rigid. Basically, there's no one type of person that is more susceptible to an eating disorder. We know that it crosses race, genders, socioeconomic status.
Okay.
So anybody
has the okay. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. That's good to know because I always wonder that. Sometimes you do see it in a few family members.
Right.
That is a component of it.
And so there's stereotypes to eating disorders. I think typically people might think somebody who is really, really thin or emaciated, but actually
true.
Actually, people of all weights, shapes, and sizes
could have an eating disorder, and you not even know. We just focus on. I know, and I'm glad you brought that up because you always think of the ones that are like skin over bones as being like, oh, she has an eating disorder,
right? Which
maybe she's just that type that's like super skinny. I've had clients that I've trained that actually they want to put on weight.
Right.
They're just so skinny, and they're tired of people telling them like, oh my God, you're so skinny. So that's a good point to look at, that you can still and be overweight.
Right.
On the heavier side.
Yeah, you can be underweight, normal weight, of a higher weight. Yeah, athletic build. So that's an important thing that we had talked about a little bit before is sometimes professionals who don't specialize in this topic don't really know how to broach weight issues. We really have to think about genetics. You might have a sibling who's really tall and thin. You might have another sibling who is shorter. And so genetically their weight could be the same, right? But they're different sizes.
Carries it differently.
Carries it differently. So that's really important to know. And an approach to working with eating disorders is they definitely need psychological counseling. They need to see a specialized nutritionist. And they need to have a medical doctor on board because labs, heart rate, things like that, vitals always need to be taken into consideration.
Okay.
And so I'll give you a couple of scenarios of how I've seen people end up getting in treatment. The first is the more severe way, where it's even if it was a short amount of time or a long amount of time, engagement in behaviors has been occurring. So whether they're restricting, whether they're binging and purging, which is vomiting, multiple times a day, several times a week. So then the medical complications come up that much quicker.
Okay.
Whether it's due to weight loss or they've remained a normal or stable weight. And so that's one way people end up in the emergency room, or they end up feeling really faint and they go see the doctor and we can't rule out anything. Everything else seems to be fine, right?
Right.
And so come to find out, oh, well, you haven't eaten in 3 days, or you've been binging and purging 40 times a day.
Right. Oh, gosh.
Yes. Yeah. So these can be really severe.
Right.
You can go into cardiac arrest from an eating disorder because you're straining your heart so much.
Wow.
The other way we typically see it happen is a gradual effect. So a teenager's a good example. They're starting to worry about their body, comparing to peers, concerned with appearance and attractiveness, and we know what society considers attractive. And so it starts out as a simple diet. Okay, I'm gonna not eat as many carbohydrates, or I'm going to exercise.
Starve myself.
Starve myself.
For a few days
exercise more, right? And so that comes on gradually, and so parents might think, oh, well, that's normal. She has put on a few pounds over the years.
Maybe she just wants to lose some weight. Yeah.
Right. However, when you're a teenager, we don't know what your weight's supposed to be. You're
Right.
still growing up. So that's something that parents can look out for.
The parent, okay.
Yeah, parents can look out for the idea that my kid is still growing.
Right, and all of a sudden he or she is not eating,
right.
or the vice versa.
And so then you see that it's been coming on for a long time, and the person might become more and more strict, more and more rigid, more and more secretive. Again, a lot of secrets with eating disorders. So if you see them isolating a lot, if you see them not wanting to eat in front of other people. If you see them using the restroom quite a bit, right after meals, that kind of stuff. And so then that way it's usually you start on the outpatient level, so they might not necessarily need hospitalization,
not be that road, but it's a starting. Okay,
right. And it's really important, prognosis or treatment outcome. The earlier you can get it and detect it, and the more support you have. So if you include family or other support systems, the better the prognosis, because eating disorders are very chronic. If somebody doesn't get it treated as early as possible, the likelihood that it's going to affect them for the rest of their life or for ongoing it's a high chance. Social media does not cause eating disorders. People say that, but eating disorders have been around for centuries.
Right, and I feel like the same way with drugs, or I mean, you can sit there and go on for that. I mean, people want to shift blames to certain things, but again, I think it's a variety of things that.
Yeah, and what happens is with social media, you have it at your fingertips all the time. So if you have somebody who's really concentrated on their eating disorder behaviors, well, at any given time of day, they can just keep scrolling, and that's going to continue to be what's on their mind.
Mentally, yeah.
Right? So that's what parents should really look out for, too, is it used to be that kids went to school for all day, they went home, and then whatever maybe their peers were pressuring them to do, that influence could be taken away at home with teaching other, important values or morals. But now kids go home and they're still scrolling while they're eating dinner. They're up in their room studying and still texting with their friends. So that's really important to know. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that's what an eating disorder is. It is constant. The person is never able to really get that out of their head, this focus on food. Weight, shape, control.
And I mean, even like that just sends up like something like when people are always posting stuff on food, I'm like, I mean, that maybe like I have heard or something that hasn't eaten, and they're always posting stuff on food. And so, I mean, are those kind of ways like people with eating disorders, do y'all find that they're trying to portray that they're eating all these things so that it kind of like hides the real like problem?
That is completely true. Yeah.
I mean,
so eating disorders.
Or eating in front of people and then going back, because they're like, well, I see them eat all the time, but do you see where they go after, Or, I mean, those are kind of things you have to look out for.
So those are symptoms. Actually, it's quite well known that people with eating disorders actually might be really obsessed with food, in terms of they might really love cooking, they might like baking and giving it to people, but they're not eating it themselves.
You never see that, right? And then another question before we wrap things up is, how young have you seen it, or should you be worried? Because I mean, I feel like you even see in little children some things where they're like don't want to wear a bathing suit, or they don't want to take off their shirt, like boys, or it could be girls or boys, or don't want to go to certain dances or whatever because they don't like their body, whatever. How young have you seen it, or is it too early to kind of send up something to the parent to keep an eye on that?
Eating disorders, from my knowledge, not in my personal experience, but as young as 7 years old.
7, okay.
There are treatment facilities that start at 6 years old
for
treatment. So really at such a young age, it can start being a psychological component. However, it may not even have to do with the weight or shape. It's that this is something that the kid can do and can control. But yeah, if you see a kid that's younger and having those worries about appearance, Definitely something to start talking to them about.
Okay.
And keeping in the back of your mind, then realizing I need to model certain things.
Right.
Encouraging them to talk about it out loud.
Okay.
That's what happens too, is somebody with an eating disorder, they use these behaviors because they can't communicate it or they don't feel like they can.
Okay.
And so they're using these behaviors to say something.
Okay.
So that's
just
important
kind
to
of
know.
like key things to look out for as a parent. Okay. Is there any other things that you can think of that could help people that are maybe thinking they have it, or where to go or turn to? Maybe is there sites or a place that they can call or discuss with someone?